Hey, welcome to Session 5, Surviving the Times. I'm Trish Mahaffey. I'm a reporter with the Gazette, and I cover state and federal courts, and today I'm your moderator. We're going to be discussing what nonprofit teams can do to keep themselves well during stressful times. What are the common stressors that put team members at risk, and what are some of the ways to address those and overcome any negative impacts? Before we get to our discussion, I want to take a minute and thank our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest, and track sponsor, Four Oaks Family and Children's Services. Because of their support, it makes this conference free. Attendees will be able to submit questions during the discussion in the Q&A box or in the Zoom chat, and then we'll get to those probably at the end of the discussion. I'm going to go ahead and let our panel members introduce themselves, and they can tell you a little bit about their positions and the organizations they work for. Drew, do you want to go first?
I'm Drew Martell, Chief Clinical Officer with Community Crisis Services. I've been working in the crisis services field for over a decade now. In addition to that, I'm a site surveyor and trainer for the American Association of Suicide, and I have a small therapy practice. Community Crisis Services, of course, is one of the organizations in Iowa that answers the 988 Lifeline, provides a spectrum of crisis services, and is also active on the national stage.
Okay. Chad?
Love it. Hi, I'm Chad Charkowski with Covenant Workplace Solutions. We offer mental health and wellness solutions for organizations. I'm head of sales and one of the owners here.
Okay. And Ryan?
Good afternoon, everybody. Ryan Crane, Executive Director of NAMI Iowa. Have been the Executive Director for almost 2 years to the day, and have some fundraising and advocacy in my background, so kind of a wider nonprofit lens.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today. Drew, do you want to start us out and kind of talk about maybe like the overall picture of what's kind of happening with nonprofits?
Sure, I can speak from my experience. So I mentioned I'm at Community Crisis Services. I just came from a national conference and I was leading a presentation there. And during that, I asked, I had probably 200 people in the room, who has found the last 10 months to be some of the most stressful in their career, and every single hand goes up. And that's been my experience as well. And so from my perspective, it's important to identify what exactly is stressful, what we're trying to survive here. And from my perspective, it's entirely unnecessary politics. That's what I've experienced in the last 10 months. Doing suicide prevention work has always had kind of a political feel to it. It's never felt anything like this. Having federal funds pulled from us without any notice at all, frozen, contradictory messaging at the federal level, changes in policy on the drop of a dime, and also what appears to be intentional spreading of disinformation by the federal government, by institutions that we as professionals relied heavily on, like SAMHSA, that has deliberately removed data sets around suicide prevention work with marginalized populations, the banning of specific words. The list, I could go on and on and on and on, but I don't want to take all of our time. But from my perspective, that is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about surviving stressful times, is unnecessary politicalization and political attacks, largely by this administration, the federal administration, on nonprofit work, all the way down to the micro level. And it's something I've never experienced in my entire career.
That's what I was going to ask you, if you feel like this is one of the worst times, or has there been others, like maybe, when the pandemic was going on or anything like that?
No, I've never experienced, we're a center that answered a national LGBTQ youth subnetwork line that was abruptly cut in the middle of Pride Month. Leading up to that, our counselors, who mostly did the work because they had family members or children that were from in that community, were being attacked by right-wing publications for being groomers and pedophiles. No, we have never experienced anything like this. Never. Completely unprecedented and completely unnecessary. Whatever your political views are, most people doing this work believe in the dignity of the individual, and this moment does not respect that at all.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, and Ryan, what are you experiencing at NAMI?
I think that the concerns that Drew mentioned are sector-wide, you might say, or that I've heard and read similar things in the nonprofit sector. I think the other thing about change on top of change was, the way that many nonprofits are, human service nonprofits specifically, are funded by the what are now called ASO regions, and used to be more at the county level. So the way that state funding, is allocated has also, caused some, heightened anxieties or whatever. And as that got rolled out, that was something that we heard roughly equally about, was the uncertainty at the state level as well. But hopefully that's smoothing out a bit as we get past the July 1st rollout of that.
Okay. I was going to say, well, so what do you do to help the people that work for the nonprofits? What can you do for them? Because I'm sure everybody's got, it's got to be like high anxiety for everybody. So how do you do that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. The reframe there. It feels like there is no perfect time to pivot or change management in general, especially at an organizational level, is very challenging.
Sure.
I think creating buy-in from the team, knowing that, I think transparency actually would probably be the most salient thing, that we as leaders don't always have answers. We cannot see around all corners at all times, right? And so being transparent with your team, being open with your team, being mindful that your team has these concerns, or many individuals on your team, even if you've never heard them talk about some of the things that Drew mentioned, assuredly they're on their minds. And so having an open ear and being transparent about where things are, what concerns you as the leader have, or what concerns may impact the budget, just really that transparency from a leadership level.
Sure. What do you think, Drew?
Well, where I struggle with this is that these things have implications at the individual clinical level for providers. This disinformation isn't just an abstract thing. Autism spectrum disorder is not caused by Tylenol. But when your federal government is telling you it is, and 99% of experts out there all over the world are saying, no, that this is not the case, the causation simply isn't there, that has major implications at the individual level. Now you've just complicated individual clinical care. And so it's not as simple in the mental health field to just be transparent and say, yeah, we know this isn't true, but we have to do it anyways. What I found is the truth still matters. And as a nonprofit, staying true to your values. One thing that I've been frustrated with, and I promise this won't just be Drew ranting, but that I've been very frustrated with, is many nonprofits have seemed to have very dynamic values in this time. And, for me, sitting at home and watching Elon Musk refer on Twitter to Lutheran Social Services, I don't have any connection to Lutheran Social Services, but I think they do phenomenal work. Refer to them as a money laundering scheme. To his, 100 million followers, every single person in the nonprofit world should have spoken out at that moment to defend them. Institutions can't defend themselves and nonprofits can't defend themselves. And so when staff come to me, what am I supposed to do with this thing that I know is obviously wrong, but is being spread by an entity, our own government? People have researched autism for 3 decades. RFK Jr. didn't uncover what causes it in 6 months with the CDC, and it just happened to be Tylenol all along. And so again, these things have huge implications at the individual level, and we're having to navigate these while being attacked by our own government. And so it has a major amount of stress on staff.
Have you guys, have you lost staff at this point, or has it impacted you that way where you've had to let people go?
We had our LGBTQ line pulled from us. That was a multi-million-dollar contract. We could get absolutely no engagement from our congressmen or senators. They would not speak to us about it. And as a result of that, we had to lay off dozens of staff, with about notice.
Was that this year? Or?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That was this in the middle of Pride Month.
Okay. And then what about you, Ryan?
We are a small and mighty team here at our state office, and we have not had direct budget impacts affect NAMI Iowa.
Okay. I did know, so that's why I wanted to ask her. Sure. Excuse me. I was just saying, and then before we get to like how you can help your staff and everything, I would say, Chad, do you kind of have a different perspective on all
Yeah.
this coming from somewhere else? So yeah, if you want to kind of.
Yeah, we work with a ton of nonprofit organizations that are dealing with the very things, that, Drew is talking about. The first thing that comes to mind is a lot of the school districts, that we work with, and a ton of funding being pulled. I work very close with Dr. John Spear at the Grantwood AEA that's local here in Cedar Rapids before he left. And, his departure, one of the main things that he stated is that he hopes to see a time where reasonable funding becomes commonplace again. So it has caused a lot of work is hard enough, right?
Sure.
A charged political environment, budget cuts, funding cuts only add to that. For us, a lot of people just don't have a real good plan in place. So that's kind of our mission is not only helping reduce the stigma that gets attached and associated with mental health and wellness, but just educating companies. There's never been a better time to have tools and resources available to help your workforce.
Okay. And so that's what your company kind of does. It goes in and helps employers like set up wellness programs. Is that?
Yeah, you bet.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, 80% of what we do is a very robust employee assistance program. Employee assistance programs have been around forever. Oftentimes they just go unutilized or underutilized. People, they don't get promoted very well. A lot of times they're attached to maybe a disability insurance program. So while organizations may have access to some therapy sessions for their employees, they just, again, they don't promote it very well, and it's not robust enough to handle low to high touch tools and resources to kind of meet people wherever they are with things that they, might be going through.
Sure. I was going to say, and you guys, is it just, what area do you concentrate in? Is it just the Cedar Rapids area, or are you all over?
We used to be part of Covenant Family Solutions, and about 3 years ago, we broke away and have the Workplace Solutions division. But we're strategic partners with Covenant Family in that they only can work with our EAP, and that kind of helps our customers with the speed in which we can see them. So it's nationwide, but we do focus regionally here, local. We start as the headquarters in Cedar Rapids. We have 10 different clinics throughout Iowa, and then we branch off into 16 different states that we actively work in. But really, Iowa is our focus.
Okay, and a big part of that wellness program is like mental health, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have the largest roster of providers Covenant Family Solutions does in the state of Iowa, and we have exclusive access to them for EAP services, you bet. And then about 20% of what we do beyond our EAP is workshops, lunch and learns. In this field, particularly, the two hands down most common really since the pandemic has been burnout prevention, and then helping employees deal with compassion fatigue. Just two real big problems that our providers have seen.
Sure. Oh, yeah, I bet. That's what I was looking at, some stuff online, and it was talking about burnout a lot, especially during these times. And that's what I wanted to bring up and ask you guys about, if you could kind of expand on that, or kind of talk about, maybe the experiences you've had with that.
I mean, it's been tremendous on the crisis services side, because when you are doing really hard work for not a lot of money and you're simultaneously being attacked by your own government, at the individual level, how do you show up to work and feel good about the work you're doing when your funds can be pulled for no reason at all at any time? How do you really feel connected to a project? And most people doing human services work do the work because they're called to it, not they didn't come come to the work for some of the other drivers people have. And so it wears on you, and it wears on you as a leader as well. And things that the typical type of burnout we've seen is not the burnout we're seeing right now. There's also, our staff care about the clients we serve, and there's tremendous concern for marginalized populations. And so there's kind of getting hit from multiple directions, and they're also scared. And you're trying to manage that in the workplace while also navigating some of the stuff that I've already articulated. And so we found it to be very, very challenging. I'm sure many other nonprofits have also, but from our perspective, the most important thing is staying true to our nonprofit's mission and values, even in the face of pressure to do otherwise. And I think there have been plenty of examples, mostly on the for-profit side, of organizations kind of being pretty dynamic with their values during this administration and facing backlash for that. It is very important to us, and I think our staff appreciate this, that we continue to message to marginalized populations, as we always have, that we are here for them, and we will do all we can to support them, rather than try to kind of move around what we're doing. And I think that's one way that we have tried to genuinely support our staff and message to them that we're going to be here and we're going to continue to do the work that we show up every day to do.
Sure. Okay. What about Ryan? What do you kind of like experiencing with, burnout, and like, how can you help your staff with that?
Burnout among staff is real. I think and that's sector wide. We are a tiny sample size of 8 FTEs here at NAMI Iowa, just for a sense of perspective.
Okay.
But we are in connection and contact with and are regularly in touch with a ton of different nonprofits all over the state. We are a statewide organization, and I do have to say I echo many of the things that Drew has heard as well, coming from the field. As a sense of overwhelm, a sense of powerlessness, and those are some of the toughest ones, some of the toughest feelings to work through as an employer, truthfully, because while we can make work environments inclusive and supportive, there isn't really at the moment a ton we can do about the broader forces, so to speak, that are at play. I think a refocus on mission can take away some of the intensity maybe of the feelings of folks, real as they are, that a refocus on the mission can be a way to sort of laser focus. This is who we are. This is what we do. These things have not changed. As I said earlier, fortunately, we have not received any cuts in our federal funding, such that we receive federal funding at NAMI Iowa, which is not really a thing, but we have not received those cuts. And so we have been able to retain focus or refocus on our mission and on our core work and on the work that happily for now is not affected by budget cuts, and to constructively sort of, as best we can. Again, this is not easy stuff. Admittedly, this is not, this is a challenging time. I don't want to gloss over that. I think in order to maintain an element of focus during core business hours, you might say, or, while we're all in the office together, that has been what has carried us. It's not particularly, revolutionary, I guess you could say, but the focus on the mission itself is how we are able to kind of plod through when we find staff have been particularly, affected by a headline or a news story or the content of what actually is going on, that the refocus on mission, yep, spoken, heard, got it. Let's see how we can plug that into our mission, or let's see how we can plug that into what's on deck for our month, as we might on October 1st here, for example. The other thing is, and again, at the risk of being a little corny or a little Pollyannish, hope is something that I think requires active engagement. Hope is not automatic. Not everybody is wired to be, a glass half full person. Mental illness also can impact hope for sure.
Sure.
And I think that I did a little bit of research before this call today and tried to find my best working definition, or kind of my best sociological or anthropological definition of hope. And it says a belief that the future holds the potential for improvement, and that you have some role to play in making that future a reality. And I've done a number of engagements and PowerPoints and stuff with audiences recently, and that message of hope, again, at the risk of being a little bit overly optimistic, I think that the focus on hope, the fact that future holds potential for improvement, and that you, individual person, you, first person or second person singular, you have some role to play in making that future a reality. That gives autonomy, that gives agency, and that feeling of hope is what I sustain myself with personally. I'll be blunt, and has had some resonance in audiences. And had a breakfast last week, for example, where I asked for audience feedback on that topic. So hope has to be there. Hope can be a loss of hope. Really is a foreclosure of seeing yourself in a future, and we want to be careful that we maintain some kind of hope, even if it is over something simple like, oh, good, I have a vacation coming up, or, oh, I can text a friend and see how my friend is doing, or, hey, it's 80 degrees and sunny out. Who would have predicted that for October 2nd? That finding some way to get hope in there on a personal level, even, I would say, is important as well.
Sure.
I think this is a lot harder. We're doing crisis work 24/7. Our staff are on the phone. They're not just hearing this stress from us, they're hearing it from clients. So when that LGBTQ line was shut down, we were taking 5,000 to 7,000 calls a month on that line alone. Those people didn't vanish. They didn't go somewhere else. They then get folded into a larger network. And so they're hearing fear on both ends, and they're getting all of this confusion. And, I agree with the spirit of what Ryan is saying, but a hopeful future is entirely dependent on people taking ownership at the individual level for the face of things. Nothing is guaranteed. And again, when I talk to people about the nonprofit field, nonprofit leaders need to take ownership for it here and now. And they do that for their staff, and they do that for their clients. And part of that is not, truth still matters. Truth should still matter, and we should not be entertaining nonsense, because it impacts the staff doing the work, and it mostly impacts the clients as well. And so it's easy for me as an administrator to say, like, well, I go home and I tune out, but I'm not the counselor that's on the phone from midnight to 8 a.m. taking 300 phone calls from people that vary from suicide ideation to major depressive disorder to fears about the state of politics. It's out of control, and it's unsustainable, and it's having a massive impact. And so this is where not to be that guy, but this has not been normal workplace wellness time for us. And our mission is to serve people in crisis. That's what it is.
Sure.
And we are seeing that escalate as money is being cut, as we have fewer counselors answering the line. And again, the people that were calling these sub-network lines that were cut, they don't just vanish. They don't just say, well, that line's not there anymore, I'll no longer seek help. They try to roll into other lines. And so we're asking our staff to do way more with less, to eat way more stress with less, and to be attacked by their own government while they're doing it. I mean, I don't know. There's not like a graduate school for this type of thing. And I have so much empathy for the line staff. They're our most valuable resource. And it really, I'm sure you can get this, it pisses me off that this stuff has gone on, and we've had to entertain it. And then we're getting guidance from institutions that matter for our staff that is just totally false stuff, just completely made up from scientific institutions. How is that supposed to help us drive services or support the staff doing the work?
Yeah. It's got to be frustrating. And so what do you do for those staff members? I mean, how can they deal with this, I guess? What are things they can do, or what's helpful for them?
I encourage them to take ownership for what's important to them. Institutions can't defend themselves, right? That's Timothy Snyder. Organizations can't entirely defend themselves. And so at this moment, I don't tell them to retreat into a shell. Someone said transparency. I think it was Ryan. Transparency is huge. And I mentioned that what we've tried to do is let them know we're going to stay true to our mission. We're not going to be dynamic with our values or change our mission. And we're going to continue to support the people that need us. And on an individual basis, I would say you need to take ownership for the things that are important to you. If there's a population that's important to you, if there's an institution or a nonprofit that's important to you, and I don't care what that is, you need to get engaged and you need to get involved. Now is not a time to retreat from the things that are important to you. Now is the time to be involved. And mostly that's at the community level. For me, when I'm struggling, even in this ridiculously unnecessary time, helping others helps me. It just does. And so getting staff engaged in that way, but also I have to be realistic that their job is to help people. And so trying to get them to engage differently than just what their job is with the institutions and the dignity of the individual and the way that's most important to them is what I've tried to do. And those are in being genuine with them also, not giving them business buzzwords or things like that about the situation we're in. They're very smart people.
Okay. Ryan, your thoughts on how to help your staff?
Yeah, I think that not retreating is the key. What Drew just brought up, I was thumbing through my slideshow, as I mentioned, and I think that a lot of times in moments like this, where an answer from myself or someone else who is, the tone does not seem commensurate with the urgency of what is going on. Again, I acknowledge what Drew is saying. I think we simultaneously quiet in the background over a span of years. I'm guilty of this. I am a big offender of this. Doom scrolling, watching your phone for 2 or 3 hours a day, compulsively refreshing for current events. Every time there's an alert from, pick your news source, doesn't matter, your inbox is filled with them. We all know this. That deliberately going outside, not doom scrolling. I know I'm at risk of being a little sounding perhaps a little too hopeful or optimistic here, but I think that really is an issue, a challenge, a problem. We all have become addicted, I think, society-wide to our devices and or to current events and or to people's reactions on social media. Sure. And my personal diagnosis to this, and what I have shared with my staff, is third spaces. And if anybody were to Google that, it's a wide variety of information. It's not a trademarked term or anything, but third spaces. And similar to Drew, I actually don't, NAMI Iowa, nor Ryan Crane, nor NAMI National, as far as I know, third spaces as open of a definition as we mean it by. It's Rotary, it's church, it's Girl Scouts, it's your local mom group, dad group. It is connecting with others in a way that brings you out of your isolation or puts you into common cause or common, Isaac Walton League, a bicycling club. I could go on, and everybody knows. So I think that there really is an element of connecting with others and resisting the urge to be isolated or to feel like you're making a difference, but really all you're doing is, rage liking or rage indicating on your device or on your streaming. Going back to a reality base where you can connect with actual folks in your community over, like I said, over civic stuff, over faith-based stuff, over activities, bowling, anything. That third space. What I mean specifically by that, and I'll define it just quickly. When you're not at work or school, if you're a young person, when you're not at work or school, and when you're not at home, where are you? And for way too many of us, myself included sometimes, we're on our phones or we're on our devices or we're on our screens. And that can be for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, as we all know. Yeah. And that requires us to kind of unplug and to reconnect with actual individuals in our community. And that is a way out of this. I don't think it is the way out of this. I think it's multifaceted, but I think that I personally have made it a point. When in doubt, it's a Thursday night. I got something on my calendar tonight, and I've made a commitment to not skip it. I'm going to be with a friend. We're going to go see a show at our local community theater. And I would love nothing more than to not do that tonight at this point, right? I've had a long day, but I'm going to keep the commitment. And that matters, those third spaces where you show up and you're in community with others and you can glom on to people in your network, in your local community, and share an experience, share an evening, share a meal, share a bike ride, that stuff really can matter cumulatively. And so I urge third spaces.
Okay, great. Well, so Chad, what are you hearing too? Are people like doing different things for wellness now, or trying different things to help employees?
Yeah, we again, we have a little bit of a more unique approach. We have a lot of licensed therapists that are credentialed specialists in a lot of different things. But we also have, a couple of personal trainers on staff, and a certified nutrition coach on staff. We have certified life coaches on staff. I think it is a lot of different things. There's no one magic bullet to cure this, but I think, what Ryan was saying, there are bits and pieces that we try to offer up as just ideas of different ways of, helping people when they're struggling. I absolutely love, what Drew said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I am so the same. When I'm struggling, helping others fills him up. And that is me too. I absolutely love that. And, Ryan, the third spaces, I'm part of, Daybreak Rotary here in Cedar Rapids. And that's one of many different things. I think it is so important just to have other outlets, have other avenues. Being present is really difficult. With the dopamine that comes from that cell phone, that we all have. It just is. It's challenging, that whole doom scrolling. Everybody is guilty of that, at varying levels. And so how do we address that? So I love hearing some of those ideas, that Ryan was sharing. That's similar to some of the things we, just try to help people with different ideas, different ways to help, when people are struggling. Even getting into the more, just in the last 5 years, and you guys being more from the clinical side, I hope you can speak to some of this as well. But just a lot of the, peer-reviewed studies that have come out that talking about the importance of, sunlight, and the impact that has, on your overall mental health and wellness, and how, we're coming into the winter months where that's not as easy to get, so, what do we do there? The importance of, nutrition has always been a topic that has gone, the importance of exercise, and that doesn't mean high intensity working out, but, getting out there and getting your steps in or whatever, just having a multi-layered approach that can give people some options, to help manage some of the things that they're dealing with beyond just obviously consultation and therapy sessions.
Sure. We did have a question. Somebody was asking like how they were curious about how the nonprofit leaders support employees who say they're struggling.
I think there's a couple, I'm just reading the question here. Sorry.
Sure.
I think there's things organizationally one can do. And I would say things like floating mental health days, removing caps on EAP, having management do check-ins, not checkups with staff, things like that, being vulnerable, right? Authentic leadership, stuff like that is all part of it. There isn't one thing. And to me, I'm not, I'm probably not the world's greatest leader, but being authentic seems to be pretty important, and being genuine seems to be pretty important. And again, I look at people are people, but people driven to the nonprofit space are mission driven. And again, they tend to go that way because of passion for the clients. And so they're not selling gadgets, which if you sell gadgets, that's awesome. Sometimes when I'm in the nonprofit world, I wish I had chosen to sell gadgets, but they're not selling gadgets. And again, when, during during this moment in this space, they are genuinely scared, and one has to recognize that if I come to work and I do kind of a false like, well, we're here and let's just move on with our day, it doesn't match with reality, and staff feel that, and so there's a genuine aspect, but there are operational or organizational things. Again, I'm a fan of floating mental health days. No cap on EAPs, although last I looked, research on EAP is like 3% utilization within organizations. And so organizations, that's low-hanging fruit. You should educate your staff on EAP utilization, and you should make it as easy as possible. And if you're not getting utilization above 5%, you need to really look at what's going on there. So I think, I think those are starting places, but from a workplace experience, people stay where they feel they belong and where they feel connected. And so if you feel connected to the place you work, I mean, that's pretty helpful too. And so making sure that we're integrating everybody into the workplace, and celebrating things, whether that's hand signed birthday cards from the CEO, or just making sure we're recognizing the victories that we do have with all staff.
Sure. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was on mute. Sorry. I think
I was like, is he messing with us?
After 5 years of this, you would think no. But I think that in addition to what Drew said, I really resonated with a couple of things that he mentioned. I think that, we as a staff love animals. It's just a funny thing. Not everybody has a menagerie at home. We have a bunch of folks on our staff who have more than one animal at home. I have my wonderful Italian Greyhound, Donatella. And so we decided that we would just take a day and go to the zoo, literally. It wasn't expensive. It was, nobody had to really put themselves out. And we just hung out at the zoo for an afternoon and did nothing about work whatsoever. And so sometimes those team building activities, if you wanted to be more esoteric and egalitarian, you could probably go volunteer at a local food pantry instead of going and hanging out with animals. But the point being that those team activities outside of the office are a way to really de-stress and be in community with each other, and not have it be as, you wouldn't want to set up mandatory fun. That's why we went out of our way to do the zoo thing. You would want to keep that as flexible and as loose as possible. But if you are able to create a space for your employees to decompress outside of the office, or talking myself into doing a VTO thing where our staff goes and packs meals or something, I'm thinking of this right now live, to enhance that purpose piece. But it doesn't have to be that. As long as you are getting a way for your staff to interact with each other that is not within the workplace and is either fun or has maybe a greater sense of purpose, or both, can be very, it's episodic. It's not, it's not a solution, but it's part of a solution to make folks feel more connected with each other in these times.
Sure. No, I agree. I was going to say, have you talked about yet, because of the funding, issue, about, are you working on more like focus for donors, like private donors, or is that not something you all have discussed at this point?
Every nonprofit is approaching private donors at this point, and the problem is the cuts have been so deep and so widespread that donors are stretched thin, foundations are stretched thin, and so there's more competition for private donors. Again, you cannot cut this much money from nonprofits, and it is historic. This is just kind of objective, and not stretch donors to their max. And then it comes down to things like, like as an organization, how crises you can't really address psychological issues if the person doesn't have food in a house. And so you have to kind of break it down to Maslow's hierarchy. So then resources are being allocated tighter. It's just from a year ago, it's an infinitely more difficult place to work, and it's infinitely more stressful. And that stress is at every single level.
Yeah. No, I know. I just didn't know if that was something, possible or not. And I know it can't replace, obviously, the funds you guys have lost. So, but I just wondered if there were any other options out there, or maybe like partnerships of some kind. Is that?
Well, but for some of these cuts that are happening that are ideologically driven cuts, I'm in suicide prevention. And so
Sure.
that's been most of my career. And so I look at, again, data sets from SAMHSA and try to direct services towards populations that have increases in suicide rates. LGBTQ community, for instance, funds have been entirely cut for that. And there's a real fear within nonprofits of retaliation. If you try to focus your services on this is kind of an unspoken truth. I just came from a huge national conference. If you try to focus services, there is a fear of political retaliation. There are certain words that are not supposed to be used in grants, and this has complicated things even more. This is a conversation one could have, but again, trying to stay true to the theme. This stress doesn't just get isolated at one place in an organization. It goes throughout the entire organization and all the way down to line staff.
Sure. No, but I mean, that's, your perspective. So I'm glad you're sharing that. So I don't know that everybody knows that or thinks about it maybe. But, well, any other thoughts, Chad, from your perspective?
Yeah, no, again, I'll just go back to what I kind of started with. Within our own, either nonprofit or profit companies, within our own organizations, again, removing the political, removing, all of that. We just have challenges, that hit us from all different avenues. And to have a support system, to have tools and resources to counteract some of that, I think is just super important, and, Drew's been dropping some great stats, and, the EAP utilization was one of them that obviously is near and dear to my heart. And,
sure,
depending, yes, on which study you look at, it's anywhere from 3 to 4%, and that's awful for an organization, for utilization. And so, if I'm an owner of a company and or an HR leader, or a leader of any kind, talking about taking that ownership of your organization, how do I want to create a thriving workplace culture? Again, for lack of better terms, that's, getting utilization from your EAP anywhere from 7 to 10% is low-hanging fruit, right? And that's not just with a robust EAP. That's not just therapy services. That's plenty more than just that. So, yeah, I just we're really just in challenging times. So I am the, similar to kind of what Ryan said, I am the glass half, full guy. I am the hope guy. I am the power of positive thinking. And, when we have situations within our own organization, that transparency and that realness that we have to have, and those hard conversations need to be there. But I think there are other ways to move forward, and just having a lot of different avenues, off ramps, if you will, to share with people, to handle that, I think is important in these times.
Sure. I was going to say, why do you know the reason why the EPA's used? So, why it's so low? I mean, why are people not, I guess, getting that help?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories on this. A lot of it comes to the majority of old school EAPs were what are called throw-in EAPs, where there's technically, they say there's no cost to them. Again, they get attached with a disability insurance. So a CFO, a director of HR, a CEO, depending on the size of the company, they in essence check the box. Oh, I have an EAP. But oftentimes it's very limited in size and scope. It may only offer, 2 to 3 sessions, and the fact that it doesn't get promoted very well. We've got HR people that we talk to every day that say, I know we have an EAP, but I'm really not sure what the name of it is, or they just don't even know about their own EAP. So I think a lot of those numbers, unfortunately, come from those throw-in EAPs. That is changing. I think the forward-thinking companies out there in this day and age are changing that model to where you're having a much more robust employee assistance program that doesn't just have limited services. There's other, workshops, lunch and learns, self-help resources, just different things that can help drive some of that utilization. I think that's it really comes down to understanding what you have and promoting what you have.
It's interesting because I see both sides of it from a provider. So I have clients sent to me from EAP programs, and then as an administrator, and frequently I hear, will my employer know that I'm seeing you or the content? Sometimes it's viewed as something punitive. And so some of this can be cleared up. And, what I recommend, I think a lot of individuals that they hear about EAP, they hear about it from HR, but HR, those are not therapists, and staff are kind of confused about what exactly EAP is sometimes. And what exactly engagement looks like. And the more you can have your EAP provider come in and say, step by step, this is actually what it looks like. This is what you'll get. And this is not, this is confidential. This is for you. But really the nuance of it, do I have to call the therapist? Will the therapist call me? What does a therapy intake session look like? Most staff don't even know that if they've never been. And so I think we've done a really bad job at really describing in nuance what EAP actually is. And also, kind of going with what Chad's saying, HR has a lot of responsibilities, and it's like, oh yeah, and here's EAP. EAP should be a core function of your organization. And so there should be a lot more HR time spent on making sure staff understand it, can engage it, and all of that.
Yeah. And that's actually what the Gazette has done in the last several years. And so they've done actually a pretty good job. And I think it's actually really helped a lot of, the employees. And I know that a lot of, people did need that help, whatever it was, and so I think those are can be valuable if the company puts enough into it, I guess. I guess that's what it depends on. But so any thoughts, you guys, that we haven't talked about on this issue that we probably need to cover?
I'm going to go a little off script and recommend something that worked for me. I turned 40 recently and decided that I just wanted to set a goal for myself, midlife or middle age or whatever. And weird self-disclosure here, I got really into birds, ornithology, have a couple of field books. Went out on some Cold Spring days, bought a pair of nice binoculars, and have just dived into and joined a couple of Facebook friends. So, I talk out of both sides of my mouth on the social media thing being bad. I joined Iowa Birding. I don't know, it's a fun group. And I have completely allowed myself to nerd out on birds for pretty much the first time in my life, and had a couple of, now that I know what I'm looking for, and now that I know whatever, now I have goals for birds that I want to see in the wild, and it's kind of become its own thing. And so, for anybody who might be tuning in, yes, do take up that hobby. Yes, do try to start getting 7,500 or 10,000 steps a day. Yes, do go pick back up that old guitar or whatever, and begin to kind of do something for yourself, and to be set a goal for yourself if it doesn't feel too stiff. And re-engage and kind of redefine some aspect of purpose that doesn't have anything to do with your job. And that has been really personally fulfilling for me.
Okay. Well, that's pretty brave that you shared that, Ryan, about the birding. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a little nerdy, I admit. Yeah.
No. I appreciate that. I was just saying, do you guys want to share your hobbies? Drew, Chad?
Yeah, I'm a sports guy. I play a lot of basketball. I hate the gym, so I try to get 2 or 3 games of basketball in per week. But to Ryan's nerding out on the birds, I love nature. And my house backs up to woods, and every day I take my dog on a walk. And if someone were to say, you can't do that for a month, like, I would lose it, right? That walk, that time in nature is so important to me. And it's 15, 20 minutes. It's nothing crazy, but it's a combination of steps and, deep into woods and nature. So it's, I hear what you're putting down, Ryan. I may have to get a pair of binoculars.
I'm an avid runner, just run a lot. And also, if you heard screaming earlier, my 7-year-old was coming home from school and being chased by a bumblebee. And and that's why I very quickly went to mute. And so I don't know the rest of that story, but
oh no, I hope he's okay. Okay. Well, if any last words on our actual topic, or
I'll have a last word. I mean, I would tell my staff this as well. If there's something I mentioned earlier, from Timothy Snyder's great book, institutions have to be defended, if there's a nonprofit or something larger or mission that's important to you, you should get involved with that. And also, I would encourage people to be as courageous as they can be around the things that are most important to them. And I would tell staff to do the same. And, that's my perspective on the time and place, is to be as courageous as you can be.
Okay. Good advice. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate your time today. And I guess that will wrap up our session. And thank everybody for watching. And I guess we will see you guys tomorrow at the second day of Iowa Ideas.
You bet.
I'll be tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was great to share the panel with you.